his suitcases packed, and they were big. And I said, what the heck are you doing here? He said, well, after you left, Mom got on that Scout so bad that she convinced him to take my brother to a tryout camp that was up the road in Santa Rosa. And naturally, my brother was very impressive. The Scout signed my brother on the spot. My brother wound up playing 16 years of professional baseball. Retrospectively, I think who got it wrong was the Dodgers. Instead of that Scout, they should have had my mom as the Scout. It all worked out pretty good for my brother. I got to tell you, folks, though, sometimes in what we do, no matter what, I mean, most people are pulling for us, I would say. Most people are good-natured and good-hearted, and I think they really want the best for us. But every once in a while, we're going to have detractors. There's no question about it. I'm sure it's the same with Cozy Medical Company. You're going to have detractors. Sometimes people aren't going to think the best of you, or sometimes people may want to rain on your parade. Well, I kind of felt that happened to me, too. I had a high school coach that was a junior varsity coach that came up to me, and maybe he was all good intention, but he came up to me the day I got drafted, and he put his arm around me, and he said, Steve, I got to tell you, what I think you should do is not sign for the Dodgers. Frankly, you're not good enough. I think you should probably take that scholarship to Arizona. And how can you really fault that? Because what's going to happen in 3 or 4 years when you finish your scholarship, you're going to wind up back here and driving a truck, probably like your dad, if you sign professionally. So I would give you this advice and not do it. And then 3 years and 2 months after he told me that, I was wearing a Dodger uniform playing the World Series at Yankee Stadium. Sometimes, folks, my point is, people can't see what you have ticking in your chest. They can see the outside, but what really happens and where it's all going to come, where the rubber hits the road, is what you have inside of you. And I think that's true in any field, whether it be in baseball and whether it be in the company that I met with the Royal Bank of Canada, or here with Cozy Medical Company. It makes no difference. What you have burning in you is going to make the decision whether you're going to be a superstar in whatever field you're in or not. And I wholeheartedly believe that. So, as time went on, I spent 3 years, as I said, in 2 years in the minor leagues, 3 years and 2 months in the minor leagues, and then I got called up in August of 1981. Absolutely thrilled. I got to be part of that World Series team in '81, which was amazing. The Dodgers come back from 2 games down to the Yankees and win in 4 games. I got to experience that. And Tommy sort of took me in his office afterwards, and he said, I got to tell you something. I got to play Davey Lopes in the playoffs because I was taking his spot during the playoffs. He says, I got to play Davey in the World Series because he has the experience. But you've shown that you can play here. So my advice to you is this: sit down during the World Series. I've got to play the veteran. But I'll tell you this between you and I: if I'm the manager next year, you're going to be the second baseman. I said, yeah, Tommy rocks. So that's what happened. I was fortunate. They traded Davey Lopes. Davey Lopes was wonderful to me. He was a great guy, showed me a lot about stealing bases, and just a wonderful person. And they welcomed me with open arms, which really smoothed the transition. It was a nearly seamless transition for me because I got to deal with these wonderful, wonderful examples of great intestinal fortitude of guys that had been through the trenches, guys that knew how to win, guys that gave great examples, and really got to deal with a bunch of grown-ups. I mean, in the minor leagues, it's a lot different. So the transition they made for me was very, very great. And I'll never be able to thank those guys enough for that because I went on to do some pretty good things. I got to be Rookie of the Year that year and made the All-Star team. And I mean, my life was just unbelievable. I couldn't believe how wonderful things were going. Now, here's where the story changes. 1983 was the worst year of my life. Absolutely the worst year of my life. And it was the scariest year of my life. I don't know how many of you people really remember 1983, but I got afflicted with a horrible throwing problem. How many of you remember that? Let's see, show your hands. Put your hands up quick. Yeah, I got this throwing problem that was just absolutely horrendous. And I was trying to be too good, without going into it too far. I was trying to be too perfect and emulate the last year. I was trying to do everything mechanically to try to do it perfectly. I made a couple of errors early in the year, and pretty soon it manifested itself into something that was pretty bad. Folks, I can't tell you, I went to bed with this, I woke up with it, I didn't have an appetite, losing weight. I was a laughing stock of the league. And I was embarrassed and humiliated and I couldn't believe this was happening to me. It was very much career-threatening. There's players that have been through it. Y'all remember Chuck Knobloch of the Yankees. Lost his career because of this.
Dale Murphy, the great center fielder for the Atlanta Braves, was a catcher. He couldn't throw the ball back to the pitcher. So he moved to first base. He still couldn't get it to the pitcher. So they stuck him in the outfield. And, of course, he did great things out there. But still, he had to change positions. So this was very, very much a big problem for me. And I didn't know how to get over it. Folks, the more I worked at it, the worse it got. That's not conventional wisdom. It says that if you work hard at it, you're supposed to get over these things. The Dodgers would blindfold me at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and have me throw the ball to first base blindfolded. And I'd throw it there every single time. Blindfolded, not even being able to see it.
Game would start. I'd do okay. And then about the 7th inning, I'd throw that thing up in Section J somewhere. It was horrible. My mom once told me I did make the All-Star team that year, mostly because of what I had done the previous year, and I got the vote. But my mom told me at the All-Star game, she says, you know, one day you're going to go through this, and you're going to think, you're going to get over this, and you're going to say, man, I'm really glad I went through that. I thought, what are you smoking? This thing is killing me. There were times where I actually thought about quitting.
But I'll get to that in a second. One thing that really helped me out through this throwing problem was my father. My dad was invincible to me. My dad made John Wayne look like a wimp. Okay? My dad even looked like John Wayne. Big. I mean, he even looked like him. That's what he looked like. And he was a tough dude. Well, in my eyes, nothing could hurt my dad. That's how tough he was for me. But my dad and I had a conversation the night before he died. My dad had 5 heart attacks and open heart surgery, and he died at 47. First heart attack at 36. Chronologically, his dad and him, my grandfather, died a month apart. So this is a problem in our family. But the night before my dad died, I had a conversation with him about this throwing problem. I was in Atlanta. I was talking to him about it. My dad was not demonstrative about his feelings. He never said, I love you. He never said, I'm sorry. That's the way he was. He was a product of the Depression. And that's the way they were. But he showed it in many other ways. And he told me in his vulnerable state, he said, one day you're going to wake up and this problem is going to be gone. It's going to be gone. It'll just leave you. Because I had the same throwing problem when I was in high school, as a senior in high school. And I thought, wow, my invincible father went through this? He was stricken with this? Maybe I'm not so bad. And he was right. One day I got over this problem. Well, the next day, my father passed away. And that was the last conversation I ever had with him. But it did make a difference. And my point to this is, sometimes leaders lead in different ways. Sometimes leaders don't have to shout it out or be a self-proclaiming type of leader. Sometimes leaders just do it by example. And sometimes they don't have to raise their voice. And sometimes they don't have to say anything at all. Because the people in the room know who the leaders are. And we certainly saw that in baseball too. One time in San Diego when I made an awful error on a beautiful Sunday. I mean, this was the quintessential baseball day. It was late spring. It was just a beautiful day, probably 78 degrees in San Diego. It was a day game. I mean, you could see that bright chalk line with that dark dirt and the smell of rosin in the air and the tobacco in the crowd. And man, the popcorn, it was just unbelievable. It was a beautiful day. We were winning the game. And then the 8th inning, I made a horrible error again. And I thought I was getting over this problem. And I just couldn't take it anymore. It just gripped me. And I ran up the field and got the third out, ran up to the clubhouse, which was a long way, and I just threw my glove in my locker and I said, I'm done. I just can't take it anymore. And I actually cried. It was just horrible. I just couldn't take it anymore. I was just done with it. I didn't care anymore.